Laudetur Jesus Christus. Praised be Jesus Christ. A very warm welcome to you on behalf of Vatican Media, Vatican Radio, and all my colleagues here at the Vatican Dicastery for Communication. I'm Sean Patrick Lovett. It's my privilege to provide the commentary for this live broadcast coming to you from Hiroshima in Japan, where Pope Francis is visiting the Hiroshima Peace Memorial. We welcome especially our friends of Catholic TV, Salt and Light TV, Shalom World TV, EWTN TV, Catholic Faith Network, and CBS News. And of course, all of you listening on local radio stations around the world. On whatever platform, medium, or device you may be following this event, please know we're delighted you could join us. Know also that this broadcast is available to you live right now on our Vatican Media audio app and Vatican News portal. You can access this at Vatican News, that's with two N's, vaticannews.va. In the background of my voice, you may have heard the announcement that the Holy Father has arrived. In fact, he stepped from the vehicle while I was giving you those indications. It is at this time around 6:30, 20 minutes to 7 p.m. in Hiroshima right now. The Holy Father has literally just arrived from Nagasaki. It's a very full day today, Sunday the 24th of November. The Pope flew this morning at 7 a.m. from Tokyo to Nagasaki. There at around 10 a.m. he visited the Atomic Bomb Hypercenter Park, where he delivered a very strong message regarding nuclear weapons. The Pope affirmed that a world without nuclear weapons is possible, but only if we involve everyone, he said, through cooperation, trust, dialogue, and prayer. The Pope then paid tribute to the martyr saints at the Martyrs' Monument on Nishikaza Hill, and after lunch at the Bishop's House, he celebrated Holy Mass at the baseball stadium of Nagasaki. Straight after Mass, he left by plane for Hiroshima, and he has literally just arrived. When he finishes this meeting for peace at the Peace Memorial, he will then return to Tokyo by plane, and I'll give you some idea of what his appointments will be tomorrow on Monday. But right now we're concentrating on being here in Hiroshima. Memory, history, so important. How important it is to remember that over 70,000 people died instantly, and another 70,000 died later on from radiation burns and from radioactive poisoning as a result of the first wartime atomic bomb that was dropped on the city of Hiroshima. The time was 8:15 on the morning of August 6th, 1945. Everything, they say, has significance. The Pope repeats constantly that everything is connected. And so here is the Holy Father in Hiroshima, a name which my Japanese colleagues tell me means vast island, and that is because Hiroshima stands on the island of Honshu, which is the largest of the islands of Japan. It was proclaimed City of Peace in 1949 by the Japanese Parliament, and the Peace Park, where the Pope is standing right now, was erected exactly 10 years after the atomic bomb attack, 1955. In 1996, UNESCO proclaimed this place a World Heritage Site. If you're watching on television or on an app, or ideally on our Vatican Media devices, then you will see the Holy Father at this moment is writing a dedication in the Book of Honor. Possibly our cameraman there of Vatican Media, our colleagues, will give us a close-up once he finishes writing. But I can give you a preview of what that is going to be. Pope Francis is writing in the Book of Honor here at the Peace Memorial of Hiroshima that he comes as a pilgrim of peace. You will see the monument behind him. It's a Shintoist form. It's a symbol of the Shintoist religion, the oldest religion in Japan, and it bears the names of the victims, of those who died. In fact, the Pope says, I have come as a pilgrim of peace to grieve in solidarity with all who suffered injury and death on that terrible day in the history of this land. I pray. Let him finish writing and then we'll see the rest. Already the fact that he reinforces this idea of the pilgrimage of peace. This is something that resounds throughout papal visits. Those of us who are old enough to remember the visit of Pope John Paul II way back in 1981 will recall that he too defined himself as a pilgrim of peace. Pope St. John Paul II stood where Pope Francis is standing today and denounced the use of nuclear weapons, and the presence of Pope Francis is a sign of that continuity. Continuity in church teaching, continuity in the love and concern of the church and of the popes for those who suffer. So the rest of that phrase, here it is in full. I have come as a pilgrim of peace to grieve in solidarity with all who suffered injury and death on that terrible day in the history of this land. I pray that the God of life will convert hearts to peace, reconciliation, and fraternal love. We may see during the course of this broadcast the gift that the Holy Father has brought. He brings gifts with him. He brought a gift to Nagasaki earlier today. It was a lamp of peace, a silver-plated lamp bearing his coat of arms and the word pax, the word peace, that we're going to hear repeated frequently. At this moment, Pope Francis is greeting dignitaries, the mayor of Hiroshima and other authorities and representatives. You may see that when the Pope greets authorities, his assistant hands out usually a small red box. It may be a different color. It seems that today it's red. Know that that contains a rosary. It's a rosary that's modeled after his own personal rosary, and it has been personally blessed by him. So again, the significance, the connection, the personal gift from the Pope to those who are here to greet him. Again, you need to know that this very full day, Sunday, dedicated to message of peace and remembrance of that terrible event in 1945. The first bomb, in fact, fell here in Hiroshima. It was the 6th of August, 1945. As I said, 3 days later at 11 a.m. in the morning on August 9th, the second bomb exploded in Nagasaki. On that occasion, 1/3 of the city was destroyed, and about 150,000 people were killed or injured. Many more died later, too, from the effects of radioactive poisoning. And there, too, a commemorative monument to peace marks the spot, and that is where Pope Francis spoke this morning, beside the atomic bomb hypocenter and the remains of Urakami Cathedral, which was once the largest church in East Asia. It was completely destroyed by the bomb. Interesting, in his discourse, Pope Francis referred earlier today to a damaged cross and a statue of Our Lady that were only recently discovered on that bombed cathedral site. And he said they remind us once more of the unspeakable horror suffered in the flesh by the victims of the bombings and their families. If you have an opportunity, I recommend that you go to our website or use one of our Vatican Media apps to read that discourse. It's extremely moving, the discourse that the Holy Father gave earlier today in Nagasaki. He speaks very strongly about the possession of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. He says that these are not a response to the deepest longings of the human heart, which yearns for security, peace, and stability. He said our world is marked by a perverse contradiction that tries to defend and ensure stability and peace through a false sense of security, sustained by a mentality of fear and mistrust. And that fear and mistrust ends up poisoning relationships between people and obstructing any kind of dialogue, he said. The Pope said that peace and international stability can be achieved only on the basis of a global ethic of solidarity and cooperation in the service of a future shaped by shared responsibility. In fact, he was very clear that a world without nuclear weapons is possible. He said he is convinced that such a dream, in a sense, is possible. He also said it's necessary. But in order to achieve that, we need to continue to ponder the catastrophic impact of the deployment of nuclear weapons, especially from a humanitarian and environmental standpoint. And we need to reject that climate of fear and mistrust and hostility. The Pope said the task of creating tools for ensuring trust and reciprocal development is one that concerns and challenges each and every one of us. No one, he said, can be indifferent to the pain of millions of men and women whose sufferings trouble our consciences today. No one, he said, can turn a deaf ear to the plea of our brothers and sisters in need, and no one can turn a blind eye to the ruin caused by a culture that is incapable of dialogue. At the conclusion of that discourse in Nagasaki earlier today, the Pope quoted the famous prayer for peace attributed to St. Francis of Assisi. I'm sure many of you know it. It's one of my personal favorites, as I'm sure it may be one of yours. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, fear. Faith, faith. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. The Pope said in Nagasaki earlier, in this striking place of remembrance that stirs us from our indifference, it's all the more meaningful that we turn to God with trust, asking Him to teach us to be effective instruments of peace and to make every effort not to repeat the mistakes of the past. So they're the key words: remembrance, memory, peace, and a strong appeal and commitment on the part of the Pope speaking on behalf of the Church, a commitment to promoting peace among peoples and nations. In fact, the Pope has called that commitment a duty to which the Catholic Church feels bound before God and every man and woman in our world. And of course, the Pope always encourages prayer. He encourages us to pray. He says, may prayer, tireless work in support of agreements and insistence on dialogue, be the most powerful weapons, that's inverted commas, weapons in which we put our trust and the inspiration of our efforts to build a world of justice and solidarity that can offer truly an authentic assurance of peace. Again, if you're watching this live broadcast, this is coming to you live from Hiroshima, brought to you live by Vatican Media and Vatican Radio, and it's through the efforts and work of my colleagues. You'll see the Holy Father greeting people who are extremely moved to be shaking his hand. They're elderly people, as you can see, and you've probably guessed by now, these are survivors of that atomic attack of 1945. Survivors, and in some cases you will see victims and family members. And we have no sound because these are very intimate, very private encounters, but one does wonder in these few seconds that they have to share with the Holy Father what it is that they say to him about not just the experience of living through that atomic bomb attack, but the aftermath, all these years since. We will be hearing from two of them in a few moments. Koji Hosokawa was 17 years of age when the bomb fell on Hiroshima on August 6th, 1945, and Yoshiko Kajimoto was 14 years of age, and they will both be sharing their testimonies, telling us about their experiences in just a few moments. The man you see on the Holy Father's left, the Jesuit to his left, is the provincial of the Society of Jesus here in Japan. Again, you can read a lovely story about him on our website. He was a Jesuit scholastic under Jorge Bergoglio, the future Pope Francis, when he was Jesuit provincial back in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And when he was ordained, his provincial invited him to go to Japan to work there as a missionary, possibly in his place, because as everyone knows, it was a great wish of Jorge Bergoglio, Father Bergoglio, to go as a missionary to Japan, something that he was not allowed to do because he was considered physically not strong enough. So again, so many wonderful connections. So here he is, fulfilling a lifetime dream. He's here as a missionary many, many years later, no longer as Father Bergoglio, but as Pope Francis. And he's accompanied by his former student from Argentina, who evidently in all these years has learnt Japanese extremely well. And so there's, again, a lovely connection, and very fitting that he should be, look at his concentration as he listens to what the elderly gentleman is saying to the Pope, and translates from Japanese into Spanish for the Holy Father. You'll see that these encounters are taking place under this arch, this cenotaph, this symbol of the Shintoist religion, the oldest religion in Japan. It represents a burial monument, and as I said earlier, the names of those who lost their lives on that day in 1945 have been inscribed on this arch. Pope Francis at this moment is greeting several of these survivors of that catastrophic event. And I repeat, we'll be hearing from two of them in just a few moments. Pope Francis is here in Japan. This is the second leg of his visit to Asia. He was in Thailand a few days ago. I hope you had an opportunity to watch some of that. If not, then again, you can find reports, you can find...
The Holy Father will now lay flowers.
You can find videos, you can find interviews and so forth regarding that visit to Thailand, all on our website at vaticannews.va. And again, if you're following this broadcast, you will have heard the announcement that he will be laying a wreath on the monument, and if you're watching, that's exactly what he's doing. Fittingly, the wreath is white, and he stops for a moment in silent prayer there at the center of the image, and next to the monument is the gift, which is the same as he gave to the monument for peace in Nagasaki. It's this candle holder, brass and silver plated, with the word Pax, peace in Latin, at its feet, and the coat of arms of Pope Francis at the center. At the top, holding the red candle in place, you'll see there are three veils. They look like three supports. And whenever we see three, of course, in the Catholic Church, we think of the Trinity, God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the triune God. A moment of reflection and silence, not just for Pope Francis as he stands before this peace memorial in Hiroshima, but I think for every one of us. I wonder if any of you who are watching or listening participated in the Second World War. I wonder what you're thinking right now. Certainly many of you will have had relatives who did.
これより教皇フランシスコによるキャンドル点灯です。The Holy Father will now light a candle. The candlestick has been prepared by the Roman courier, especially for this visit.
There you heard the confirmation that the candlestick was especially prepared for this visit. It's the same. There were two. One was the Pope gave to the peace memorial in Nagasaki, and this is its twin here in Hiroshima.
Let us all offer a moment of silence. Please stand up.
Another moment of silence. Unfortunately,
We shall now begin the moment of silence.
Unfortunately, there's no such thing as silence in a radio broadcast. But there are the sounds of the bells. The tolling of bells in any culture, anywhere in the world, reminds us of those who've died.
ご着席ください. Thank you. Please take your seats.
70,000 people died instantly at 8:15 on the 6th of August 1945. And at least the same number, another 70,000, died later from the radiation burns. Right now, according to the program, we will hear from two of those survivors.
証言いただくのは梶本よし子さん、細川浩二さんです。
Koji
We will now
Hosokawa.
hear testimonies from survivors of the atomic bombings, Ms. Yoshiko Kajimoto and Mr. Koji Hosokawa.
Night has already fallen in Hiroshima because it is already past 7 p.m. in the evening.
私は梶本よし子と申します。
We now
被
listen
爆
to
の
Mrs.
時は
Yoshiko
14
Kajimoto.
歳で中学3年生でした。爆心地から 2.3 キロ北で飛行機のプロペラ部品を作る
My
作
name is
業中
Yoshiko
に被
Kajimoto.
爆しました。
When we were bombed, I
窓
was
に真っ青い
14
光
years
が
old
流れ、爆弾
and a
だ
third year
と思った
middle school
時
student.
瞬間
At the
に
time, I
工
was
場は
2.3
倒壊
kilometers
し
north of the
下敷き
hypocenter,
になり気絶
making
して
parts
しまい
for
ました。
airplane propellers.
友達の悲鳴で気がつき、
The moment a blue light
無我
flowed through the
夢中
window,
で
I
這い出
thought
し
it
た
was a
時
bomb.
膝に
Then the
大
factory
怪我を
collapsed
し、
with a
腕
loud
に
sound
は
and I
ガラ
fainted.
スが刺さり、
I
大
became
怪我
aware
でした。
of my friends'
間もなく
screams,
火災が発
but it
生
was
し、
dark
歩けない
and I
友
couldn't
達を
move. because I was
担架に
buried
乗
under
せ
timber and
避難し
tiles.
ていきました。その途
I
中
realized that a friend
来る
was
人
under me, so I
来る
called
人が
out to see if she
真
was
っ赤に
alive.
焼かれ、顔は
I
ただ
tried
れ
to escape,
唇は
but
垂
my
れ下
right
が
foot
り
was stuck in the
手を
timber.
前に出
When I
して
finally pulled it
そ
out,
の先に
my
は
shin was
焼
torn
け
and
ただ
bleeding
れた
badly.
皮がぶら下がり
When I went
人
outside,
の姿
all
で
the
は
surrounding
ありま
buildings
せ
were
んでした。
destroyed. It was as dark as
3日
evening
後
and smelled
偶然
like
父
rotten
と
fish.
出会いました。
Soon a fire
本当
broke
に
out in the
嬉しかっ
neighborhood,
たです。
and friends who could not walk
父
were
は
evacuated
3
on
日間
stretchers.
死体を
I
めく
also
っ
helped
て
carry
私
one.
を探してくれたそう
Along the
で
way, there were
その
people
時
walking side
浴
by
びた
side like
放射
ghosts,
線の影
people
響か
whose whole body was so
1年
burnt
半後
that they could not tell the difference
吐
between men
血
and
し
women.
て亡くなりました。
Their hair
母
standing
は
on end,
20
their
年間
faces
苦しみ
swollen
な
to
がら
double size,
原爆
their
症
lips
で
hanging
亡くな
loose,
り
with
友
both
達の
hands
多くもがんで亡くなりまし
held
た。
out with burnt skin hanging from them.
74年経った
No one
今
in
も
this world can imagine such a scene of
白血
hell.
病、がんで苦しんでいる人がい
In
ま
the
す。
following days, white smoke
この
was
よう
everywhere.
に恐ろしい
Hiroshima had become a
悪魔の
crematorium.
核兵器
For a
は
long time, I could
こ
not
の
remove
地
the
球
bad
上
smell
に
of cremated
存在
people
しては
from
な
my
らない
body
んで
and
す。
clothes.
この苦
3 days
しみを
later, on the
子
way
供
home,
たちや
I
世
accidentally
界
met
の
my father.
誰にも
He had
させ
searched
て
for
は
me for
な
3
りませ
days.
ん。
Assuming I was dead, I was really happy. However, my father had been exposed to radiation, and after a year and a half, he vomited blood and died. When I got home, I had a high fever and a lot of bleeding from
そ
my
れで
gums.
も核は必要ですか？
My mother died of
一人の
atomic bomb
力は
disease
小さい
after
ですけ
suffering
ど
for 20 years.
平和を願う多くの
2/3
人の
of
力
my
と
stomach was
亡くなっ
removed
た人の
in
魂によって
1999 because
核
of
は
cancer.
必ず廃絶されることと
Most of my
確信し
friends
ており
have
ます。
died of cancer.
そのために微力ながら日夜証言に携わって
In
おりま
addition,
す。
due to
ありがと
radiation,
うございました。
74 years later, I suffer from leukemia and cancer. I work hard to bear witness that we must not
Now,
use such
本日
terrible
細川
atomic
さんは
bombs again,
体調不良で
nor let anyone in the
ご欠席の
world
ため
endure
私
such
が代読
suffering.
させていただきます。Unfortunately, Mr. Hosokawa was not able to attend today. I will read his testimony on his behalf. 終戦間近の1945年8月6日、
As you hear the testimony of
広島市
Koji
中心部に
Hosokawa
投
is
下され
being
た原爆は
read by the
一瞬にして
MC,
全市を
he too
壊滅
is
さ
an
せ
A-bomb survivor,
市内
and
にいた
his testimony
35
reads,
万人のうち
Towards the end of the
およ
war,
そ
on
14
August
万
6,
人の生命を奪い
1945,
ました。
the atomic bomb dropped on the center of Hiroshima. It destroyed the entire city in an instant and took about 140,000 lives out of the 350,000 people in the city. I was 17 years old at the time and was on the fourth floor of the building, 1.3 kilometers from the hypercenter when the bomb was dropped, but I miraculously survived. Of the dozens who were exposed in the same place, I'm the only one who is still alive. The next day, when I returned to my home in Miyajima, the evacuation destination, I learned that my 13-year-old younger sister, who had been doing work as a mobilized student, was only 700 meters away and died on August 6th. Even though they survived, many people suffered from keloids throughout their lives, as well as from after effects and prejudice. I've always lived in fear of a recurrence of atomic bomb disease. I think everyone should realize that the atomic bombs were dropped not on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but on all humanity. War makes people crazy, and the ultimate craziness is the atomic bomb that negated human existence. Although there is little time left for me, I believe that passing on the experience of Hiroshima to the next generation is the final mission assigned to us A-bomb survivors.
The Holy Father will now deliver his message for peace.
And after those extremely moving testimonies of two A-bomb survivors, as you heard, we will now hear the address of Pope Francis. We're here at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial in Japan, and you're listening to our live broadcast coming to you through Vatican Media and Vatican Radio. The Holy Father will be speaking in Spanish, as he has done throughout the visit to Thailand and Japan, and I will translate for you into English.
Por mis hermanos y compañeros, voy a decir la paz contigo.
For love of my brethren and friends, I say,
Dios de misericordia y
Peace
Señor
upon
de la
you.
historia. A ti elevamos nuestros ojos
God of mercy
desde este lugar,
and Lord of history,
encrucijada de muerte y vida,
to you we lift up
de
our eyes from
derrota
this
y
place,
renacimiento, de sufrimiento y piedad.
where death and life
Aquí
have
de
met,
tantos hombres y mujeres,
loss and rebirth,
de sus sueños y
suffering
esperanzas,
and compassion.
en medio de un resplandor de relámpago y fuego, no ha quedado más que sombra y silencio.
Here, in an
En
incandescent burst of
apenas un
lightning and fire,
instante, todo fue devorado
so many men and women,
por un agujero negro
so
de
many dreams and
destrucción
hopes
y muerte.
disappeared, leaving behind only shadows
Desde
and
ese
silence.
abismo de silencio,
In
todavía
barely an
hoy se
instant,
sigue escuchando
everything was
fuerte
devoured by a
el
black
grito de los que
hole
ya no están.
of destruction and death.
Venían de diferentes lugares.
From that
Tenían
abyss of
nombres
silence, we
distintos.
continue even today to hear the
Algunos de
cries of
ellos
those who are no longer.
Hablaban lenguas diversas.
They came from different places,
Todos quedaron
different
unidos
names,
por un mismo destino.
and some spoke different languages.
En una hora tremenda que marcó para
Yet
siempre
all were united
no
in the
solo
same
la
fate,
historia de este país, sino el rostro
in a
de la
terrifying hour
humanidad.
that left its mark forever, not only on the history of
Hago
this
memoria
country,
aquí de todas las
but on the
víctimas.
face of humanity.
Me inclino ante la fuerza y la dignidad de aquellos que, habiendo sobrevivido a esos primeros momentos,
Here,
han soportado en sus cuerpos
I pay homage to all the
durante
victims,
muchos años
and I bow
los
before the strength and
sufrimientos más
dignity
agudos,
of those who,
y en
having
sus
survived
mentes
those first moments,
los gérmenes de la muerte
for years
que
afterward,
seguían consumiendo su energía vital.
bore in the flesh immense suffering,
He sentido el deber de venir
and
a
in their
este lugar
spirit,
como
seeds of
peregrino de
death
paz,
that drained their vital
para
energy.
permanecer en oración, recordando a las víctimas
I felt a duty to
inocentes
come here
de
as a
tanta
pilgrim of peace,
violencia,
to stand in silent
y
prayer,
llevando también en el corazón
to recall
las
the innocent
súplicas
victims of
y
such
los
violence,
anhelos de los hombres y mujeres de nuestro tiempo,
and to bear in my heart
especialmente de los jóvenes
the prayers
que
and
desean la
yearnings
paz,
of the men and
trabajan
women
por
of
la
our
paz,
time,
se sacrifican
especially
por la
the
paz.
young, who long for peace,
He venido a este
who work for
lugar
peace, and who
lleno de
sacrifice
memoria
themselves
y de
for peace.
futuro, trayendo el grito de los pobres, que son siempre las víctimas
I have come to this
más
place of
indefensas
memory and of hope for the
del
future,
odio y de los conflictos.
bringing with me the cry of the poor, who are always
Quisiera
the most
humildemente
helpless victims of hatred
ser
and
la voz de
conflict.
aquellos cuya voz no es escuchada y que miran con
It is my
inquietud y
humble desire
angustia
to be
las crecientes
the voice of the
tensiones
voiceless,
que atraviesan nuestro tiempo,
who witness
las
with concern
inaceptables
and anguish
desigualdades
the
e
growing tensions of
injusticias
our own time,
que amenazan la convivencia humana, la grave
the unacceptable
incapacidad
inequalities
de cuidar nuestra casa
and
común,
injustices that threaten
el
human
recurso
coexistence,
continuo y espasmódico de las
the
armas
grave inability to
como
care for our
ciertas
common home,
pudieran garantizar un futuro de paz.
and the constant outbreak of armed conflict, as if these
Con
could guarantee
convicción,
a future of peace.
deseo reiterar que el uso de la energía atómica con fines de guerra es hoy más que nunca un crimen, no solo contra el hombre y
With
su
deep
dignidad,
conviction, I wish once more to
sino
declare
contra toda
that the use of
posibilidad
atomic
del
energy for
futuro
purposes
de
of
nuestra
war
casa común.
is today more than ever a crime,
El
not only
uso
against
de energía atómica
the dignity of
con
human
fines
beings,
de guerra es inmoral,
but against any
como
possible future
asimismo es inmoral
for our common
la
home.
posesión de las armas atómicas,
The use of
como ya
atomic
lo
energy
dije hace 2 años.
for purposes of war is
Seremos
immoral,
juzgados por
as
esto.
is the possession
Las nuevas
of
generaciones
such
se
nuclear
levantarán
weapons.
como jueces de nuestra derrota. Si hemos hablado de la paz, pero no la hemos realizado
We will be judged on
con
this.
nuestras acciones
Future
entre los pueblos de
generations
la
will
tierra.
rise to condemn our failure
¿Cómo podemos hablar de
if we
paz
speak of peace but do
mientras
not act to bring it about
construimos
among the
nuevas y
peoples of the
formidables
earth.
armas de guerra?
How can we speak of peace
¿Cómo
even as
podemos
we
hablar
build
de paz
terrifying new weapons of war?
mientras justificamos determinadas acciones espurias
How can we speak about
con
peace
discursos de discriminación
even as we
y de
justify
odio?
illegitimate actions by speeches filled with discrimination
Estoy convencido
and
de
hate?
que la paz no es más que un sonido de palabras si no se funda en la verdad, si no se construye de acuerdo con la justicia,
I am
si no
convinced
está
that peace is
vivificada
no
y
more than an
completada
empty
por la
word
caridad,
unless it
y
is
si no
founded on
se
truth,
realiza en la libertad.
built up in justice,
La
animated
construcción
and
de la
perfected
paz
by
en la
charity,
verdad y
and
en la
attained in freedom.
justicia significa reconocer que son muchas y muy grandes las diferencias entre los hombres en ciencia, virtud, inteligencia y
Building
bienes
peace in
materiales,
truth and justice
lo cual
entails
jamás puede
acknowledging that
justificar
people frequently
el
differ
propósito de
widely in
imponer a los
knowledge,
demás
virtue,
los propios
intelligence,
intereses
and wealth,
particulares.
and that this can
Por el
never
contrario,
justify the attempt
todo
to
esto
impose our own particular interests
constituye
upon
una
others.
fuente de mayor responsabilidad y respeto.
Indeed, those differences call
Asimismo,
for even greater
las
responsibility
comunidades
and respect.
políticas que legítimamente pueden diferir entre sí en términos de cultura o desarrollo económico, están llamadas a
Political
comprometerse a
communities
trabajar
may
por el
legitimately differ
progreso
from one
común.
another in terms of
por el
culture
bien de
or
todos.
economic development, but all are called
De
to
hecho,
commit
si
themselves to
realmente
work
queremos
for the
construir
common
una
cause,
sociedad
for the good of all.
más justa y segura, debemos dejar que las armas caigan de nuestras manos.
Indeed, if we really want to
No es
build
posible
a more
amar
just and
con
secure
armas
society, we
ofensivas
must
en
let
las manos.
weapons fall from our hands.
Cuando
No
nos
one can love
entregamos a la lógica de las
with offensive
armas
weapons in their
y,
hands.
y nos alejamos del ejercicio del diálogo, nos olvidamos trágicamente de que las armas,
When we
antes
yield
incluso
to the
de
logic of
causar
arms
víctimas y
and
ruinas,
distance ourselves from the practice of
tienen la
dialogue,
capacidad de provocar
we forget to our
pesadillas,
detriment that even before
exigen
causing
enormes
victims and
gastos,
ruination,
detienen los
weapons
proyectos
can
de
create
solidaridad y de
nightmares.
trabajo útil, alteran la psicología de los pueblos.
They call for enormous expenses, interrupt
¿Cómo
projects
podemos
of
proponer la
solidarity
paz
and of useful
si
labor,
frecuentamos
and warp
la
the outlook
intimidación
of
bélica
nations?
nuclear como recurso legítimo para la
How
resolución de
can we
los
propose
conflictos?
peace if we constantly invoke the threat of nuclear war
Que este abismo de
as a
dolor
legitimate
evoque
recourse
los límites
for the
que
resolution of
jamás
conflicts?
se pueden atravesar.
May the abyss of pain endured
La
here
verdadera paz
remind us
solo puede
boundaries
ser
that must
una
never be
paz
crossed.
desarmada.
A true peace
Además, la paz
can only
no
be
es la mera
an
ausencia de
unarmed
guerra,
peace.
sino un perpetuo quehacer,
For peace is not merely
resulto de
the
la
absence of
justicia,
war,
del desarrollo, de la
but
solidaridad,
must be built
del
up
cuidado de
ceaselessly.
nuestra casa común
It is
y de la
the fruit of
promoción del
justice,
bien
development,
común,
solidarity,
aprendiendo
care for our
de
common
las
home,
enseñanzas de la historia.
and the promotion of the common good, as we have learned
Recordar,
from the lessons of
caminar
history.
juntos, proteger.
To remember,
Estos son
to
tres
journey together
imperativos morales
to
que
protect.
precisamente aquí, en Hiroshima, adquieren un
These
significado
are
aún
three
más
moral
fuerte y universal
imperatives
y tienen la capacidad
that
de
here in
abrir un
Hiroshima
camino de paz.
assume even more powerful
Por lo tanto,
and universal
no
significance
podemos
and can
permitir
open a true path to
que
peace.
las actuales y nuevas generaciones pierdan la memoria de lo acontecido.
For this reason, we cannot allow
Esa memoria que es
present
garante
and future
y
generations
estímulo para
to
construir un
lose the memory
futuro
of what
más
happened
justo
here.
y más fraterno. Un
It is a
recuerdo
memory
expansivo,
that ensures
capaz de
and
despertar las
encourages the building of a
conciencias
more
de
fair
todos los hombres y
and
mujeres,
fraternal future,
especialmente de
an
aquellos que hoy
expansive
desempeñan
memory
un papel
capable
especial
of
en el destino de las
awakening
naciones.
the consciences of men and
Una
women,
memoria viva que nos ayude
especially
a
those who
decir
today play a
de
crucial role
generación
in the destiny of
en
the nations.
generación, nunca más.
A living memory that helps us say in every generation,
Precisamente por esto estamos
never
llamados
again.
a caminar juntos.
That is
Con una
why
mirada de
we are called to
comprensión
journey
y de
together
perdón, abriendo el
with a
horizonte
gaze
a
of
la
understanding
esperanza y
and
trayendo
forgiveness,
un rayo de luz en medio de las numerosas nubes que hoy ensombrecen
to
el
open the
cielo.
horizon to hope and to bring a ray of light
Abrámonos a la
amid the
esperanza,
many clouds that today
convirtiéndonos
darken the
en
sky.
instrumentos de reconciliación y de paz.
Let us open our hearts to hope
Esto
and become
será
instruments
siempre
of
posible
reconciliation and peace.
si somos capaces de protegernos y sabernos hermanados en un destino común.
This will always be possible if
Nuestro mundo
we are able to
interconectado no
protect one
solo
another
por la
and
globalización,
realize that we are
sino desde
joined
siempre
by a
por
common
una
destiny.
tierra común, reclama más que en otras épocas la postergación de intereses
Our world,
exclusivos de determinados
interconnected
grupos
not
o
only by
sectores
globalization, but
para
by the very
alcanzar
earth we have always
la
shared,
grandeza de aquellos que
demands
luchan
today more than ever
corresponsablemente para
that interests
garantizar
exclusive
un
to
futuro
certain
común.
groups or sectors be left to one side
En una
in order to achieve the
sola
greatness
súplica abierta
of
a
those who
Dios
struggle
y a todos los hombres
co-responsibly
y mujeres
to
de
ensure
buena
a common
voluntad.
future.
En nombre de todas las víctimas
In a
de los
single plea to
bombardeos
God and to all
y
men of
experimentos
and women of
atómicos
goodwill,
y de todos los
on
conflictos
behalf of all the victims of atomic bombings
desde el
and
corazón,
experiments,
elevemos
and of all
conjuntamente un
conflicts,
grito. Nunca más la guerra,
let us together
nunca más el
cry
rugido
out,
de las armas,
never
nunca
again
más
war,
tanto sufrimiento.
never again the clash of
Que venga
arms,
la paz en nuestro
never
día,
again so much
en este mundo
suffering.
nuestro. Dios,
May peace come in
tú
our
nos lo
time
has prometido.
and to our world.
La misericordia y la fidelidad se encuentran. La justicia y la paz se besan.
O God, you
La
have promised us
fidelidad
that mercy and
brota de la
faithfulness have
tierra
met,
y la justicia
justice
mira desde el cielo.
and peace have embraced.
Ven, Señor,
Faithfulness shall spring
esta
from the earth,
y
and
donde
justice look down
sobreabundó
from
la
heaven.
destrucción, que hoy también pueda sobreabundar la esperanza de que es posible escribir y realizar una historia diferente.
Come, Lord, for it is late,
Ven, Señor,
and where
Príncipe
destruction
de la
has
paz.
abounded, may hope also abound,
haznos instrumentos
that we
ciertos
can
de tu
write
paz.
and achieve a different future.
Por mis hermanos y compañeros voy a decir la paz contigo.
Come, Lord, Prince of Peace, make us instruments and reflections of your
教
peace.
皇フランシスコからの
For love of my
平和の
brethren
メ
and
ッセージで
friends,
した。
I say, peace
Thank you for your
upon you.
attention. 教皇フランシスコご退出です。皆様ご起立の上、広島平和の歌でお見送りください。The Holy Father will shortly depart. Please stand up and send him off with the Hiroshima peace song.
One of the key passages in the Holy Father's discourse you just heard was his declaration that the use of atomic energy for purposes of war is today more than ever a crime, not only against the dignity of human beings, but against any possible future for our common home. The use of atomic energy for purposes of war is immoral, said Pope Francis, and he added a phrase that was not in his original script. Not only is the use of atomic energy for purposes of war immoral, but so is its possession. This reminds us of something the Pope said 2 years ago in 2017 when he hosted a conference in the Vatican, a conference that brought together politicians, Nobel Prize winners and scientists, inviting them to search for new ways to free the world from nuclear weapons. Pope Francis addressed the opening of that conference and said nuclear weapons are not only immoral, but must also be considered an illegal means of warfare. A month after that conference, Pope Francis was flying back from his visit to Bangladesh, and during the in-flight press conference, responding to a question by one of the journalists, he repeated, "We are at the limit," he said, "of legality in terms of possessing and using nuclear weapons. With such a sophisticated nuclear arsenal, we risk destroying humanity, or at least a large part of it." In fact, Pope Francis has continued and intensified efforts to avoid what he has more than once called the suicide of humanity. You heard that very strong appeal a few moments ago, an appeal which again you can find in its integral form on our website, as well as a summary of what the Pope just said here in Hiroshima with regard to nuclear weapons, describing Hiroshima as a place where death and life, loss and rebirth, suffering and compassion come together. The Pope said we are called to respect 3 moral imperatives: to remember, to journey together, and to protect. We cannot, he said, allow present and future generations to lose the memory of what happened here. It's a memory that ensures and encourages the building of a more fair and fraternal future. A memory to awaken the consciences of all men and women, especially those who today play a crucial role in the destiny of nations. A memory that helps us say, in every generation, never again. Nunca más. We are called, he said, to journey together with a gaze of understanding and forgiveness, to open the horizon to hope, to bring a ray of light amid the many clouds that darken the sky. The Pope invited all of us to open our hearts to hope and to become instruments of reconciliation and peace. This, he said, will be possible only if we protect one another and realize we are joined by a common destiny. Our world, he said, is interconnected, not only by globalization, but by the very earth we've always shared. And it demands today more than ever that interests exclusive to certain groups or sectors be left to one side in order to achieve the greatness of those who struggle co-responsibly to ensure a common future. The Pope concluded with a prayer, inviting us to join him in this single plea to God and to all men and women of goodwill on behalf of all the victims of atomic bombings and experiments, said the Pope. Victims of all conflicts, let us cry out together, he said, never again war, never again the clash of arms, never again so much suffering. And that concludes this live broadcast coming to you from Hiroshima in Japan. Our next commentary in English will be tomorrow morning at 2 a.m. Rome time, at 10 a.m. local time in Tokyo, and that will be the Pope's meeting with victims of the so-called triple disaster, the earthquake, tsunami, and radiation disaster that took place. You may remember the Fukushima nuclear disaster of March 2011. That's the first event on the Pope's schedule for tomorrow. After that, he will be making a private visit to the Emperor Naruhito at the Imperial Palace, and then meeting with young people at the cathedral. His final appointment of the day tomorrow, that's Monday, November 25th, is the celebration of Mass at the Tokyo Dome, and then he meets with the Prime Minister and members of the diplomatic corps and authorities. We have commentaries on most of those, and so we hope you will join us on whatever platform or device. We thank our friends of Catholic TV, Salt and Light TV, Shalom